All right, everyone, welcome back. Today we're talking about bicycle rodeos, kindergarten cops, the infamous Catamaran Maneuver, and that time Chris was arrested in 5th grade.
So my latest adventure with an e-bike, right? And
an e-bike. Look at you.
Let me take a step back and clarify. I'm not riding the e-bike. I don't own an e-bike. I don't really think I promote the e-bikes in their existence. But they're everywhere. We get it. I think it's kind of, and again, to put on my old man hat or, maybe my old man Munsing wear, I have a lot of problems with them because again, they're not really regulated. Their kids are given no training. Kids are given these $1,500 or $2,000 e-bikes to just kind of, haul ass around the street. I don't know about you, Jeff, but I've seen a few. I've seen the aftermath of a few accidents. I've gone by and said, "Oh, there's an ambulance. It looks like that something happened there." To me, they're just crazy. And I just think that, and again, I think I have a lot of problems with them. I can see where I'm not for super regulation, but I think they need a little bit. But when I think about e-bike and to go like, yeah, back in my day, it was just like, no, we obviously didn't have e-bikes. Although I think we were about 15 at the advent of the moped, right? When the moped came out, and that was super cool. It's like somebody had a moped, but that was really, right? That was kind of just like almost a gimmicky kind of thing, because you put some gas in it, but then you had to pedal it to get the motor to start, and then it would only run for a while and you have to pedal it again. But again, the moped was kind of cool. And again, but it got me thinking, and I know we've touched a little bit about this before, but bikes in general, again, when we were growing up, by the time, and maybe not right, I don't know about you, probably definitely not my first bike, because my first bike was, I think, a hand-me-down, or second bike, probably my third bike. But once bikes to us, when they became, now I guess these kids are using them for transportation like we did, but to the fact that we have these bikes, and it was how we got from point A to point B. I don't know if you ever rode your bike to school. I did on occasion, because it kind of seemed like more of a hassle than it was worth. But you had to, especially if you're wearing pants, and you had to do that little rubber band thing around your pant leg, right? So you didn't get your cords caught up in the bike chain. But I look at this, and it again makes me think back to how we got around on our bikes and how they were a pretty big part of our life. And it was really the first case for us anyway of sort of that class struggle of how nice your bike was, and how your bike was compared to other people's, and if it would the style, the make, everything else. But your bike was kind of you, just like, especially in California, like people, right, obsessive kind of car culture. They think their car says something about them, and kind of the same thing with our bikes, which was really kind of, and I guess now with the e-bikes, it's all the same. What they're saying, their message is, yeah, F you, I'm going to drive like a maniac, and you better watch out and don't kill me because I'm a stupid kid. But anyway.
Yeah, well, there was no shortage in the 70s and 80s of kids that were on vehicles that they should never be on. We always knew that one crazy kid that actually had a dirt bike, and he would just ride it down, residential streets like an idiot. And that was the coolest kid ever. But that kid should not have been on a dirt bike hauling ass at, 50, 60 miles an hour down residential streets and up sidewalks. But pretty cool, right? Very bad news bears. Right?
Unless that was Kelly Leak. I said,
very Kelly Leak of him, exactly.
Super cool kid.
But for the most part, you couldn't get up to that kind of speed, right? And so nowadays with e-bikes, to your excellent point, you're giving a kid that doesn't know hardly anything about riding a bike the ability to go, 45, 50 miles an hour, right? And they're silent. At least with an effing dirt bike, you can hear them coming a mile away and smell them coming a mile away. Dude, I have been walking around paseos and little nice parks around here, just having an old man's journey on my little, keep your heart rate up day. And all of a sudden and it's just, you didn't hear it come. It just came right behind you. They missed me by 1 inch, and they've got to be going 45 miles an hour on an e-bike. And I just keep thinking, dude, you have no idea the damage you would do to my body if you had actually hit me just now. So they're an old man menace. You're right. E-bikes are a little weird, but Chris, dude, nothing was worse than having a shitty bicycle back in the 70s because, oh, the torment and the loss of status. So walk me through this, Chris. First of all, huge question. Did you have a 10-speed or a motocross?
I had a 10-speed. And
Oh, Chris, no.
Yeah,
No.
I did. Now, some people had a total baller move. I don't know if I knew people that maybe had two bikes, right?
Yeah.
And so they were like that the guy now, the modern guy that's got like a convertible for the weekends or something. He's got his fancy car and then he's got his SUV to get his kids driven around. No, I had 10-speed. I will copy the thing about my 10-speed, and again, I had a hand-me-down 10-speed until I got my own 10-speed. I did, however, there was a time, and yes, I probably, as uncoordinated as I probably wasn't the right guy for a motocross bike, although several of our mutual friends had them. But at my 10-speed did have, we took off those stupid, like, handlebars that were like commas, right? And you kind of lean.
Like ram horns?
Yeah, it's uncomfortable and stupid. And so I had 10-speed with it had motocross handlebars. So that was super effing cool because I kind of felt like, because then I'm sitting up straight and riding, I got my cool, and you had a little bit more control. And yeah, and it definitely didn't hurt, right? You weren't bending over or anything like that. So I had the 10-speed like that. So am I to understand that no, you were one of those cool motocross dudes?
Well, now you've intrigued me. I have never even considered what that would even look like to have a 10-speed bicycle with motocross handlebars. I guess it was done. Good for you for kind of saving grace and not having to bend over and look like a weirdo.
I got it from Wheels and Things.
Listen, we lived in pockets, little neighborhoods, Chris. And as you know, even streets had their own identity, right? This street that I was on, Bonneview Drive, we were very different than the Castleberry people or the Park Ridge people or the Sunny Bray people, right? Those were a whole different class of kids. So it was almost like The Warriors, the movie from the 70s, The Warriors, where you had the Riffs and the Tourmalines and the Warriors and all the different
Furies.
ones. The Furies, the baseball Furies, my favorite of all time.
Furies, right.
But yeah, and so in my neighborhood, on my street, Bonneview Drive, what a very edgy masculine name.
Who's Bonnie and why are you viewing her? I guess would be the question.
Everything in my neighborhood was all Scottish references, a Bonnie View and a Sunny Bray,
Oh,
but anyway,
got it.
Yes, and you should know those streets because they were right near our high school, Patrick Henry. A Wandermere, also another word. But anyway, we all had motocross. Now, for whatever weird reason, my parents, best parents ever, God bless them, bought me my first motocross bicycle. And guys, anybody listening that doesn't understand or know, motocross, all that means is you didn't have 10 speeds. It was meant for going in the dirt and off little dirt berms and hills. It was just pure pedal power. And you had to have what, Chris? You had to have the handlebars that were the motocross handlebars. They had to have some kind of a little mini bar connecting the left and right handle of the handlebar.
Right.
You had to have, if you were a cool kid, a welded bike. That means that all of the pieces of metal had to be welded together. Now, that sounds weird to some people, but I had the biggest piece of shit bicycle ever created to mimic or mask or try to get kids to believe it was a motocross bike, and it was called a Huffy Thunder Road. Literally the wimpiest, sissiest motocross bike ever built, and it wasn't welded, it was pinched, Chris. They just took a little crimping tool and pinched the metal together. So this thing was rickety, it was ugly, and when my parents gave it to me on Christmas morning, it had streamers coming off the handlebars. Chris, mother effing streamers coming off the handlebars. It had a sissy bar, for God's sakes, a banana seat with the famous sissy bar coming down to the back fork. It took me 3 days just to disassemble the bike enough that it was respectable so that at a distance I wouldn't get my ass kicked if somebody saw it.
Yeah, well, I think we touched on this in the past, and just the brand Huffy wasn't doing you any favors, right? I
No.
mean, I think right away, it could have been the coolest look. It could have had, you just could have been like all tricked out and had some really kind of cool extras to it. And the fact that it was Huffy, I think my brother had a Huffy 10-speed and he tried to like remove the Huffy decals and they were like seared on.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think, definitely that was your first challenge. But yes, all the accoutrements that came with a motocross bike, as you were riding on all those streets, and I think it's funny that you talk about the names, and I don't even understand what the streets, like you talked about. Okay, if yours was, if somebody was Scottish and they helped develop your neighborhood, and that's where those streets came from, and we had all the streets that were named after lakes as well, right? Where and I think there's all the lake streets, Lake Apopka and Lake Baden, and they were all off of Lake Murray, right? So there was these lakes, and then ultimately somebody thought maybe the Great Lakes area. We also had these streets we had like Tommy and Jackie, and it was like, all right, who is naming these, these streets after their kids? I grew up on the street called Meewall, right? And people would go, how do you spell that? It's like, how the F do you think you spell Meewall? Let's just take a wild guess, right? And they would always guess right? Because it was just like,
Chris, was it Mewall?
that was it. Okay. That was it exactly. But for some reason, people thought it was mule or whatever. But again, so you're riding, and one of the things I remember again is we had to use it for transportation, and so sometimes yes, we would ride them. I mean, I had friends, people that would try to ride to the beach, which was a bit of a disaster, right? Because we did not live close. They would have to take side streets to the beach. Will take you a really long time, especially if you're got a boogie board on your back. But again, we rode our bikes everywhere, and again, the times we ride them to school, and I think on one or more occasions where we rode our bikes to school, we had, I'm not going to say altercations, but maybe minor confrontations with number one, there was like the crossing guards, right? Or as we call them, the patrol boys. And I don't know if you had, again, we had patrol boys.
Once again, it's very Warriors, the patrol boys. That could have easily been a gang in the Warriors, the patrol boys. Yeah.
It could be, or the Van B boys or something like that from Seinfeld. But,
or yard duties.
Right. Exactly. So the patrol boys, and they would make these guys, and let's just say you had to volunteer for it, and let's just say nobody who had any thought for even a second thought I'm going to look like an idiot wearing a red windbreaker and a yellow plastic helmet that looked like the fake batting helmets we used to get. Although instead of getting like a Padres or a Milwaukee Brewers helmet, it was just like yellow.
Yeah.
And they would have a whistle, and they would literally try to direct traffic. And so, of course, usually we just didn't even go on the block that they were on. But sometimes if we rode our bikes, we took where the patrol boys were. And so one time we blew through the intersection where the patrol boys were. And remember, at each school, and again, much different than the things they talk about these days, but each school had like a safety officer, right? And there would be a cop who would check in. He had like a number of schools that he was responsible for. He would go in and just, I don't know, sometimes he would give bullshit lectures on safety or whatever. Ours was named Officer Barnes, or as we called him, Officer Crosswalk. Because yes, if he saw you not going through the crosswalk or not using the patrol boys, and of course we did both. We blew right through the patrol boys' whistle on our bikes, and of course, who was there parked across the street in his squad car was Officer Crosswalk.
Yep.
And I think I could best describe him as he was a dick. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he kind of thought he was Dirty Harry. I think maybe he was pissed off because he didn't have a cool assignment. He wasn't undercover, or he didn't have a cool traffic assignment, or he wasn't in like a crime infested area. Instead, he was literally policing kids on their road safety and school safety in San Carlos.
Let's have a little bit of compassion for this guy. In my mind, having seen thousands of episodes of homicide detective dramas all throughout our childhood, we know that he must have been a guy whose dad was a cop. And by God, his dad before him was a cop. And he was out there trying to prove something to his dad, who he never felt he could live up to. And guess what? on his very first case, as soon as he became a plainclothes detective, he screwed up, Chris. The bullet went off and he didn't mean for it to. It just dropped and it hit a, oh my God. And then the paperwork, and it was an embarrassment. And then he got relegated to watching a bunch of little shits on a crosswalk. And all he can think about before his dad dies is making him proud and finally putting the Varducci gang in prison where they belong. The very same gang that his dad could never pin anything on. Now do you feel good about how you said all those mean things about this poor Officer Barnes when all he's trying to do is make good in the world and jail the Varduccis and make his dad proud?
He was still a dick, okay? Regardless of all of that. But you're right. But you're absolutely right. Yes, and maybe there would have been that situation, a hostage situation or something, some sort of, let's say an angry dad takes his wife and his kids right across the street from the school, and Officer Barnes manages to save the day. And guess what? He finally gets promoted and gets his shield and gets his gold shield. And he's no longer, he's Detective Barnes. And maybe that would have been it.
And then dies one day before retirement. The end.
Exactly. But the thing is, like I said, so here's the thing. So we got busted by Officer Barnes. Okay. I mean, a couple of others. I mean, he lit us up. Woo! Okay. As we were going, and we're like, what the hell? Okay. So literally the first time I ever got pulled over was on my bike. Okay. And this wasn't even before this. Again, this was with a hand-me-down 10-speed because at this point I was like 11 or 12. I didn't even have the cool 10-speed with the motocross handlebars. So he pulled us over, chewed us out, asked us our names, took our names down like he was. But then it was just like, and of course we had. I don't know why we told him. I guess we were right by school, so he could have found out if we told him we were like, Richie Cunningham and Potsy Weber or something like that. He would have found out. But. So we had to write essays, like a 400-word essay on proper safety, obeying signs, and the patrol boys, and all that kind of crap. And I don't know what the ramifications would have been had we refused, but I do know that my mom called the school with one of those, doesn't have anything better to do than to he's like, just maybe like, yelling at him would have been fine. But instead, like somehow he had the power to make us write an essay about why it was. So again, eventually, like I said, he brought down the Varduccis. He saved the family from their crazed dad who, was just misunderstood and had just lost his job and was under a lot of stress. And he also reunited the family at the end and everybody was happy. But no, that was Officer Barnes, or as we called him, Officer Crosswalk.
I remember, I'm going to put this out there, Chris. He did not have the power to make you write an essay. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
We did it.
Okay, well, good for you. And I don't know if it's the same guy. It may have been the same guy, but we had an officer that would come visit our school. This is grade school, right?
Yeah, so it's not high school, Jeff.
Right. He would do these demonstrations with his patrol car. And honestly, they were effing impressive. So this guy would first of all, he would drive the cop car onto the playground. And if you want to blow people's minds in grade school back in those days, we just thought, holy shit, there is a cop car driving on the playground blacktop. This is the greatest day of my life. You felt like you were in an episode of 1 Adam 12 or, Starsky and Hutch, of course. And here he comes, man, cop car. And he blasts that siren and we're just like, oh, man. Boop, 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 boop. We're like, oh, dude, here he goes. And then he would go to one end of the playground. And Chris, kids were lined up on either side of his patrol car, not more than 10 feet away from this road he had created with pylons. Pylons, Chris, was all that was separating children from this guy's fucking patrol car. And he revs his engine like a drag strip and he guns it. Right. And now he is getting it up to 50 miles an hour on the blacktop and then slamming on his brakes and white smoke everywhere. And the point of the demonstration was how long it takes for a car to stop after they slam on the brakes. And there were these little pylons set up that represented kids. and they had little paper faces on them like it was a real kid.
Like a
And
paper
he
doll.
just ran them over and killed every one of those pylons. And again, the children watching this are standing feet away from this car that is going 50 miles an hour on the ass top. But we loved it. But I'm like, holy shit, you could never get away with that.
Okay, Jeff, that had to be Officer Barnes. Okay, first of all,
Oh,
because
okay.
I know we were, because I think they did have like they had like a bunch of schools like in the same region district. I can't imagine it's like they had a different cop at every school, right? And I know for a fact because I think by the time we hit junior high, I made a comment about Officer Barnes, and somebody went, wait, you had Officer Barnes too. So it very well could have been Officer Barnes, especially. But the last time he got to light that siren up was when he was pulling over a couple of kids who, blew through the crossing guard, the traffic patrol or whatever.
The patrol boys.
Patrol boys. Thank you. So I would bet money that was Officer Barnes.
Yeah.
And yes, so he's like, finally, I get to turn on, I get to impress somebody, I get to drive fast, maybe I get to do some donuts, or I get to burn out, peel a little bit of rubber, which brings me to, I think I remember some demonstration vaguely like that as part of the bike rodeo. Now, did you remember the bike rodeo?
Wow. I hadn't thought of that in a long time.
And
Yeah.
the bike rodeo, which was, and again, bike rodeo, maybe it's kind of aligned with the kid who would be a patrol boy or kids. And again, I can remember when it was like, when it was still segregated, it's like there were no patrol boys. I think toward the end of maybe sixth grade, where we had somebody cross became the first female patrol boy, right? Sort of a, Jackie Robinson kind of moment there.
The patrol person. Yeah.
Right. The patrol person, no, I think they probably, again, thinking of the time, they probably still called her a patrol girl or something like that. Anyway, but the people who participated in the bike rodeo.
By the way, Chris, I'm not sure it was technically a Jackie Robinson moment, but I get the reference. That might have been a little more historical, but I get it though.
No, but I'm trying to think of, I know. I don't, I don't mean to denigrate the memory of Jackie Robinson. But essentially, I think the kind of kid that was a patrol boy / girl was the kind of kid who decided, hey, Mom, could you sign this permission slip so I can be in the bike rodeo? Because I knew of the bike rodeo. I think I may have even seen part of it. I sure as hell was not going to participate in the bike rodeo, which was, I think, consisted of, yes, probably why those pylons were there, right? You would ride your bike through some pylons. I think maybe you were timed. There was like, same thing. There was like a bit of a sprint from like point A to B, see how fast you could get, and I don't know what other exercises you could possibly, perform to show how you would win, how you'd be a bike rodeo champion. Yeah. All I know is a goofy name. They promoted it once a year. And yes, the school safety officer was always involved. But that just kind of, I think there definitely had to be some sort of connection between the safety patrol and the safety officer and the bike rodeo. Well,
the bike rodeo just reeks of Officer Barnes. His fingerprints are all over that event. I'm sure of it. And they even took it one step further where they were encouraging kids, I don't know if you did this or not, Chris, to go to the fire station, the local fire station, and register your bike. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine? Yeah. As if, by the way, what does this imply? This implies that if I go to the fire station and they write down the registration number of my bike and it gets stolen, clearly, now that there's a record, you guys, it'll easily be found, right? It's like the assumption was that, thank God, my bike is now protected now that you have the number on it.
And they gave you a sticker, right?
Yeah.
That went on like a reflective sticker that had a number.
Yeah.
That it would been 26615 and registered to Jeff Thill, and it was kind of reflective, and it would go like on the seat post, right? So right under, but yes, and of course you couldn't just peel that thing off.
No. A thief could never just peel it off. That sticker. Well, for one thing, Chris, it's illegal to peel it off. So no thief in their right mind would ever peel off the sticker.
It was like a modern day LoJack.
Minus the technology or any ability to do what it says it's going to do. But yes, that's right.
Right. And the fact that but a lot of cases you wouldn't worry about, or you hoped, let's say you wanted your bike to get stolen. So then maybe you could get another
Yeah.
one. You didn't want it to be recovered. You didn't want the police to call it or drive by your house. Hey, good news, Jeff. We found your bike. Even the thief got tired of it, right? All the tires are flat and it needs a new chain, but here it is.
Well, Chris, guess what kid did not want to go to the fire station and register his piece of shit bike? It was the owner of the Huffy Thunder Road. I did not want to go to the fire station, first of all, and have the fire people mock me. Dude, seriously, your dad bought you this bike? Holy shit. And then secondly, here's what they did. I had to do it, so they put the sticker on, and it made my mom and dad happy. I took that sticker off 3 days later because I wanted that bike to get stolen. I used to leave it everywhere, and nobody gave a shit. Nobody took it. Nobody stole it. It was unstealable.
In fact, you came out once and there was a second Huffy Thunder Road, right? Somebody just tried to leave it there. They thought maybe they're collecting them for poor children.
You come back and there's just a pile of them. Exactly.
Here, dispose of your Huffy Thunder Road here, right? But see, the thing about, again, like, so did you never get promoted to a better bike? Were you always stuck with the Huffy Thunder Road? Do you have a bike now? Like I have a Trek.
Oh man, I do, man. Yeah. I do. My wife and I have really cool, super awesome beach cruisers, right? Which is definitely an older person's bike, but man, and there's nothing fancy about them. They're not electric. There's nothing special. They're just really bitchin' beach cruisers. And that was a different breed, right? The beach cruiser person, that was someone that lived near the beach, typically, I would say.
Well, exactly, Jeff. Or it was just different enough to be cooler, right? So it's funny for, like if you have a beach cruiser now, maybe it's revenge because, yes, you finally got your beach cruiser. It's taken decades because you didn't get one then. I remember distinctly going to Wheels and Things when it was time, and I had saved my money. I had saved part of my allowance, so I had like $50 that I would put toward the bike.
Whoa.
And I know, and my parents were going to split the difference, right? And
whoa.
I don't know how that happened because they usually did things money, like man. That. Right. So there was a bike, again, the bike that I got, and I remember very explicitly that it was like, it was a brand new 10-speed. It had, and it cool. We'll put those handlebars on for you. It was $185. This bike was called a Campus Sport, which was just a pretty, middle of the road 10-speed. The Schwinn beach cruiser that was like electric blue, and it had like a white seat, and it had white like foam grips, and it was super cool. It was $195.
Oh boy.
And my parents wouldn't go for it. It's like, we're talking $10.
Chris, if memory serves me, and I think I'm going back about 12 episodes, your mom was the one that gave you the exact number of pennies you needed for the cafeteria snack.
My mom gave me 22 cents. She gave
instead
me
of not a quarter, 2 dimes and 2 pennies. The end.
That was enough for one ice cream bar and one chocolate milk.
Oh yeah.
22 cents. And
well, and you're surprised they didn't want to go the extra $10. Okay.
I wasn't surprised. I was angry. It's like, just let me work, just because, again, I think I had saved up my weekly allowance. Just let me put 2 more weeks allowance. Give me an advance, but didn't work that way. Right. But it's like I said, it's cool the way that you got your beach cruiser now, much like the way several years ago when I bought a pair of Stan Smiths at the Adidas store because I had never had a pair of Stan Smiths back when they were cool, when we were in junior high. And now I have Stan Smiths. I bought Stan Smiths because now it's my decision. These are not Zips. These are not Kinney NBAs. These are actual Stan Smiths.
What I love is that we decided to get the things that we wanted at an age where nobody even looks at you anymore or even notices that you're alive on the planet. There's not one single person looking at us or caring. Nobody's saying, hey, look at that guy in his Stan Smiths or that dude on his beach cruiser. And by the way, this just goes in general for all men that are listening to this show right now. If you're under the thought or the misconception that women can still find you attractive once you hit the age of, let's say, 32 or 33, and you fool yourself when you go into bars and restaurants thinking you're still pretty good looking, I think we all kind of try to do that. Here's the thing. Not only do they not think that you're good looking or attractive at that age, but they can't physically see you. Their eyes don't even see you anymore. You're not even in the visible spectrum. So in a police report later on, they would say, I swear to God, I don't even know that guy was even there. So what is my point in all of this? Look cool if you want to later in life, but you're doing it for nobody. Okay, there's nobody gives a shit, and that's maybe kind of freeing in a way as well. But there you go.
Yeah, it's the same conversation I have when it's like you're gonna wear that shirt, or it's like you're
Why
wearing
not?
those shorts. Like, you should those shorts again. It's like,
Yeah,
who am I trying to impress?
yeah.
Right? It's clean. I guess there's those stains or holes in it. I guess that pretty much qualifies as wearable.
I'd be
Right?
more worried about the guy that's our age that thinks he is impressing people. That guy would worry me. That's delusional, is what that is. But Chris, we've talked about this many times. The problem with being our age, right, in our late 50s, right, is we, in our minds, are 19 to 23 or 4 years old. I mean, I think my brain is about where I was in terms of being, looking at life and being excited about things. I feel like I'm probably 24, maybe. Now I'm more experienced than a 24-year-old. I have more emotional maturity. I've experienced more things, but in terms of how I feel inside, I'm about 24. What is your age in that
Well, I
brain
mean,
of yours?
I think first of all, with you, I don't even know if you're 24, because I think part of it, you can think you're younger because of some of your interests, some of the things that you've never like you've loved science fiction and things like that, and UFOs and conspiracies, right? And Adam West, all these things that like you don't feel any differently. You probably like them even more now as you've learned and you've evolved and and it's like it means more to you now. And my daughter gives me a hard time if she thinks it's something, if I'm listening to a Spotify playlist, it's from the 80s or something, and gives me a hard time. And then I say, like, so what you're telling me is 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you're not going to listen to Taylor Swift anymore or something like that, because that's all she really wants to listen to. And of course she argues, no, that's not how it works. I go, well, you see, it's the same way. But probably I get you. No, I don't even know how I would, other than, well, physically, I know how I feel what my age is.
I think it's really funny, Chris, that you think your daughter can hear anything you say. You know that she's hearing, it's literally like Charles Schultz. It's literally, womp, 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 womp. Yeah, so good for you, though, for believing that she
Or
even
it's like
hears you.
it's like a dog. A dog recognizes their name, and that's about it. It says blah, 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 Lola, blah, 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 blah. It's
Exactly.
like that's all they hear. But yeah, the age, and then, I mean, you and I have that in common, both, especially when you're the youngest of three kids, like we both are.
Yep.
So it's like, so I'm going to look in the mirror and I'm going to say, it's like, yeah, I still see, and nothing was more evident that wasn't true, like a few weeks back with our reunion, right? But yeah, I still feel, and yes, I still have a lot of the same interests, and the same things still make me laugh. I still care about a lot of the same thing, or appreciate the same things. So yeah, and then as far as, yes, nobody will care that I finally did get that pair of Stan Smiths, or I finally got that cool leather jacket that I always wanted, and something like that. But I don't care. I mean, it makes, I don't know, I guess, it's I don't say it was a goal, but it's something that's like, yeah, I finally got that, or finally, got my hands on that. So I don't know, but I definitely, I definitely can relate to that,
Yeah.
and my bike's, and definitely my bike's a little bit cooler than, like I said, I think it's a Trek. I'm not even sure. I don't ride it very often.
Well, there was the bikes, for sure. And Chris, I guess I got to understand this, because if you had a 10-speed, albeit one with motocross handlebars, which was a very cool idea, one of the biggest things that we did on our bikes back then was we would seek out 24/7 a dirt hill or a ramp or some kind of an off-roading thing, which usually involved either a park, a lake, or a construction site. Oh, a construction site was a big target, right? When they started grading those hills, man. And so we would just challenge each other to go off jumps and down super steep hills. And I'm just kind of curious how someone like you even managed to stay in any kind of a peer group with a mother effing 10-speed. How did you go down hills and go off jumps?
I just didn't. You know what I mean? To me, it was just like, because I think I took the opposite approach.
I decline.
The motocross was cool for doing stuff like that, right? On a construction site, or somebody's house is getting remodeled and there's a big pile of dirt, and people are like jumping off of that until the angry dad comes out and starts yelling at everybody. But if you flip it around, when we use it as transportation, I had no problem going up Navajo Road. Okay, because it was just like, well, because I'm just going to put it just going to shift gears, and I don't even have to stand up. I don't even have to get off my seat. So that was the trade-off to me. And again, much like I said with my coordination, although I did skateboard, right? And see, that was the thing again, where from time to time we could use skateboards for transportation for shorter distance, although I think people have always used them for longer distances. That was the thing for whatever reason. And a skateboard at the time, yeah, you could go get a skateboard at Gemco or something, right? And it would just, somebody would buy a skateboard right off the rack, right? Or the really cool skateboard you bought a stereo, you bought components.
Yeah.
So I can still to this day talk about my Gordon and Smith Warp Tail 2 with gull-wing trucks and yo-yo wheels. Okay, bought the board and then the trucks and then the wheels, right? And so that was my prized possession. That was probably more important to me than certain family members, I think.
Yeah.
So that, like I said, and for whatever reason, I had a pretty cool skateboard, and I was a little bit better on a skateboard than I would have been, I guess, on a motocross bike, even though, again, I think when we talked about injuries a while back, yes, I did break my tailbone. So, that, again, great mode of transportation, because we were pretty limited, right? We had our bikes, we walked places, maybe you took a skateboard, maybe you took a bus, which, and again, everybody had stories about taking the bus to the beach, right, where we lived. And, from a mileage standpoint, we didn't live that far from the beach. But from a not owning a car standpoint, we had to take a bus. And buses were kind of, I don't want to say scary, but buses were definitely a different experience, riding a bus to the beach with your boogie board and a towel, from San Carlos to Pacific Beach.
We did it a lot because this was an age, everybody, when we were 12, 13, 14, maybe even 15, before we had a learner's permit, before we could drive a car. And yeah, you would get that bus route going, and you would get your boogie board, as we've talked about, your skateboard, whatever, and get on the bus. Here's the problem. By car, Chris and I lived maybe 15 minutes away from the beach. 10 to 15 minutes, you could be at the beach in a car. In a bus, you were lucky if you could get there in under 2.5 hours.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, it was maybe 3 hours. So go to the beach, spend 15 solid minutes of having fun, and then get back in the bus and come back. No, not quite that bad, but still pretty bad.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah, and nothing's changed on the buses. Still to this day, all the same issues, right? Just, good Lord, why? And every time you'd get on the bus, you would say, why? Why do we get on the bus? Why are we doing this? I'll never do this again. And then next weekend, you're doing it again. I don't know how.
And the bus drivers were always a little bit scary, right? They were gruff. They were not happy. They were bus drivers, right? Yeah. They had to throw people off. They had people who didn't want to pay. You had drunks and idiots. You had, people, I get it. Not the most ideal job, but they were a little bit scared. And so you were a little bit intimidated. You had to have exact change. And again, I might have been a quarter, right? So I had to borrow an extra 3 cents if I was getting it from my mom at that point or something. But no, I think by then I had my own money to go ride a bus. But again, that's something today you never. I would bet money. I would bet more than 25 cents that you never told either one of your sons, oh, well, why don't you guys just take the bus there?
Yeah. No,
never in your life.
No. And I remember having a bus incident where my mom was nervous that I was just going with me and one friend. And I was only like 13 years old, I guess. Mm-hmm. And she's like, just you two, and you're going to go all the way down to the beach on that bus? I don't know if I like that. Come on, Mom, I can handle it. And on the way back, I open up my Velcro wallet that is now soaking wet from, the Pacific Ocean. And
yes, your rainbow wallet.
The $2 or $3 that were supposed to be in there were no longer in there. Obviously, they flew out at the beach or God knows what when I was boogie boarding and didn't have the change. And so back then, it was like total panic time. We had to get off the bus and then just literally walk to a payphone and then look around for loose change and other payphones and parking meters and ask people like, just like, hey man, can you spare a dime? And I guess when a shivering, skinny little, idiot like me in my OP bathing suit and boogie board asks you if you can have a dime, I mean, they normally will just give you a dime. What the fuck? So But eventually we were able to call my mom and like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, where are you? And of course, we're young. We don't know exactly how to explain it. We can't say, you're going to want to take the 8 and you're going to want to take it west. Now you're going to want to get off it. We're just like next to the roller coaster and there's a Jack in the Box.
Jack in the Box, yeah.
My mom's like, you motherfuckers. Oh my God. Yeah. And let me just take time off of work and go get you. Yeah.
Right. And there's like a surf shop right there and they rent boogie boards.
Yeah.
And oh my God. Yes.
And by the way, you can't keep her on the phone and say, hey, you know, once your dime is done, we just had to sit there and go, well, I hope eventually she drives by. We'll just see what happens now. You know, you can't like call her back again.
No, because by then she's in the car.
Yeah.
No, because she couldn't call you to say, like, I can't leave for 25 minutes, right? So she hasn't even left the house. Your mom hasn't even left the house, and you're wondering, is she? Well, she's almost here, I'm sure, right? And she's not even close, right? I mean, that's hilarious because again, that's very relatable. The buses were terrifying. I do similar to your story. I remember not having change, and I remember having $1 and trying to stuff the dollar in the little change thing, and the bus driver grabbed this big meaty paw, you know, and it was like his hand. It was just like engulfed mine. It was like Andre the Giant or something, and he like grabs my hand, and he was just like, "Go!" Now I remember, and it was like this deep resonant voice, and I'm like, "Don't put that in there." And then I'm like, "Okay," and then he like in one motion, he let me go, like gestured for me to go to the back of the bus, and he took the $1 and stuck it in his pocket. So I was just
nice.
And I'm like, okay, well maybe he can get another pack of smokes when he gets off, right? So that I remember very vividly. It was one of those ones like
a carton of smokes. No, maybe no. Okay, maybe.
Well, no, a carton of smokes. Right. It wasn't that long ago, but you know how like if somebody touches like somebody you're not expecting, like grabs your hand or something, and then 5 minutes later you can still kind of feel it.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe.
And not in a good way. It's not like, oh, this is cool, but it was just like he touched my hand, and I can kind of feel his big meaty Andre the Giant like paw on my skinny, scrawny, you know, just twig like fingers.
Yes, that's right. Wow. I don't know that I've ever exactly had that feeling, but I can picture it somehow when you're describing it. So maybe I have.
Yes, when you're not expecting to get touched and you get touched. I'm gonna move on. I think I've just opened a huge can of worms right there.
Yeah, sounds like it. But no, for sure. And you know, you brought up skateboards, you know, and we've talked about them on previous episodes. In fact, I loved your description of your skateboard because you just named, you know, 3 or 4 brand names at that time. But you're absolutely correct. And in the early days of skateboards, they had wheels that were the same as roller skates. The earliest skateboards, I'm not joking, had metal wheels. Oh my God, the worst, right? The shittiest roller skates that you would get as a kid, probably more back in the 50s, honestly. They would have like metal wheels, which were terrible. And then they had these clay wheels, remember? And they were called Flintstones, right? And they were clay wheels. And what does that mean? That just means they're super shitty and rickety and you're shaking the whole time. But and then they could chip really easily if you hit a rock. And it was a horrible, you know, you know. Then, Chris, do you remember the most amazing thing happened in the world of skateboards? They got a kind of wheel called Cadillacs. Cadillac wheels were made out of that gel,
urethane.
That kind of
they were made of urethane
rubber, and
they were
I
very
couldn't
smooth.
believe it. The first time a kid came down the street with Cadillac wheels, and you couldn't even hear the skateboard, and I'm riding it. I'm like, oh my God, this is the smoothest thing. And we just thought the world had, you know, come to an end in a good way.
You could see the ball bearings in there.
Right.
And so the and much like the urethane wheels. And then once I got my yo-yos, which were like probably 5 times the size. But they were still the same concept, made of the same kind of material, and it was like smooth and made no noise. And you could go over a rock and not almost kill yourself, depending on the size of the rock.
And that was back when skateboard manufacturers were getting very creative marketing-wise, because they would say, like, I remember once I got a board called a Perkins board. And honestly, it was no better than any other piece of wood. It was just, ooh, a Perkins, wow. And so you could make up any shit you wanted if you were selling skateboards or skateboard accessories. Ooh, a
Sure.
Perkins? What makes it different? Nothing. It's just a piece of pine that says Perkins on it. Do you really think there's a difference? But we all believed it, right? And so we all had different versions of the best wheels, to your point, the best trucks. Then they started coming up with those little, forgive me, I can't remember what they are, but the little plastic, almost like shock absorber plates that you would stick between the truck and the underbelly of your skateboard. But that was super important too. Oh, you don't have this? Oh, I can't believe you're even on that skateboard without this. Oh, fuck, now I got to take my parents and go down there and get that.
A skid plate, I think, which would go under the tail.
Oh, the kick plate and the skid plate. Oh,
kick
man.
plate, skid, and then yeah, it was weird because again, I remember getting that, and then I had a piece of like that went around the nose of the skateboard as well.
Sure.
Again, it was like a urethane to kind of protect the nose.
How about the rails, the little rails that went along the side, so you could. By the way, the rail implied that you could do an actual trick, that you would actually somehow get air and you would be pulling as if we could ever fucking do that. I looked today, Chris, at the things that skateboardists can pull off, and I'm talking kids that were way younger than us that can do, flips and just insane skateboard acrobatics and go off of the railings of giant staircases and somehow not break both ankles and kill themselves. And you're like, dude, if that guy could go back into the 70s or 80s and pull off that trick back then, he would have had God status. He would have been, name your price. You could do anything you wanted. You might get above Evel Knievel status if you could pull off those tricks as a skateboarder back in the 70s and 80s. But anyway, we were shitty at it. Yeah.
Oh, completely. Not a little. And it's in the Olympics
do a
now.
clack, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Click clack.
I could do a 180 pretty well. I couldn't really do a 360. We used to do this really stupid move called a catamaran. I lived on a really long street, and you would sit on your board, and your friend would sit on his, and you'd put your feet on each other's boards, and you'd hold on to each other's arms.
Chris, was it almost like a catamaran?
It was almost like a catamaran, and you went on this, and my street, Mewall Drive, was, anybody who knows, was really long and steep, and we went down that thing with cars coming up the street because they were late for class at Grossmont College, which was nearby, and they would use us as a shortcut, and many of times my life was in my own hands on the catamaran.
Yeah, the greatest thing about the Catamaran Maneuver is now you are below the grill of a car. You are so low to the ground that no normal car can see you. And let's add that it's now dusk and you're wearing dark clothing and you're about 1 foot off the ground, going down a street, down the middle of the street, by the way, where no car would expect it. So catamaran related incidents, and I'm sure deaths, were probably relatively common.
The very least with your skinned elbows, right? And you'd get some gravel and some asphalt and some dirt and everything in those. I think I still kind of have some old scars on my elbows from that, but definitely. But now, much differently now. I mean, a kid that my son went to high school with was just in the Olympics, so it's pretty wild to think that how far it's come. I don't think we thought in those terms then. Maybe I missed my shot.
The Olympics for skateboarding?
For skateboarding. She was in the Olympics in Paris. Mm-hmm.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
That's good. Now, was she better than the breakdancer?
I think she was definitely better than the breakdancer.
Okay.
Yes. I would lay every money. I don't think anybody would disagree.
Well, how cool. The Olympics, and not only that, but your son actually knows her. And not like I know a guy that knows a person who was the second cousin to her, like you were talking about, right? Everyone knew somebody from some kind of urban legend. Your son actually legitimately knows someone that's in the Olympics, and it's for skateboarding. So how freaking cool is that? I love that.
It was very cool.
Well, hey, look, I feel like we did some justice to the world of bikes and the bike hierarchy. Definitely 10 speeds versus beach cruisers versus motocross. Now people can kind of feel my pain a little more. Hopefully you'll go online and take a look at a Huffy Thunder Road and you'll say, Jeff, I'm so sorry. I do feel bad for you. That was horrific.
We'll do that.
And then who knows? Officer Barnes, maybe he's not with us anymore. Maybe he is, but God bless him for, taking that hit, getting pulled off the mainline plainclothes detective force and protecting kids as they went through crosswalks, flipping him off.
And making them write essays. So,
Yeah, God
hey,
bless you, Officer Barnes. All right. Well, Chris,
props
what
to
do you
Officer
think,
Barnes.
man? Until next time.
Till next time, Jeff.